Welcome to ReSounding, a podcast exploring the power of the arts in advocacy and in action. We talk with artists and activists, taking a deep dive into questions surrounding the causes of displacement, the strength and the vulnerability of people on the move, and the potential of the arts to shine a light on social justice and impact people's lives for the better. My name is Laura Hassler, and this month I spoke to Natalie Porias, Managing Director at Red Noses International, a global initiative that uses clowning as a transformative experience for refugees, children, and other vulnerable people. She talked to us about her Zen philosophy of clowning and the life-changing importance of laughing at our mistakes. So, Natalie, welcome to ReSounding.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
It's lovely to speak with you, and of course we met once in a panel as you were representing Red Noses on our Human Rights Day broadcast last year, I guess, in December. So it's really nice to explore a bit more about what Red Noses does and how they work, and I, especially as Director of Musicians Without Borders, and going through your website, I saw so many things that resonated a lot with our work. So I'd really love to hear more about it. But could we maybe start with that you just tell your own story, how you became involved and what your role is and what inspires you there, and then we take it from there?
Great. Yeah, with pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I always love speaking about our work and it's a great opportunity. So yeah, my name is Natalie. As you already mentioned, I'm the managing director for Red Noses International. We're headquartered here in Vienna, but we work in 11/12 countries because we have a permanent presence in Greece now since very recently. And my own story is I came to this organization more than 16 years ago as an intern. I just, I was after university looking for my first stable job and kind of trying to find myself. And I saw this ad out there for an internship with Red Noses. It was already quite well known in Austria. I had no idea that they worked internationally back then. It was also very new. So I applied for this internship. I got it and I got hooked. I just fell in love with clown art and the art of clowning. And I did not have it on my radar at all. For me, clowns were something that are, going to birthday parties, making balloon animals, or maybe I've seen them in a circus and I never really liked them so much in the circus, to be honest. But then I found out that actual and true clown art is something extremely poetic, extremely almost philosophical and Zen Buddhistic. It is just really, really beautiful. And that if you transfer this art to places where you find people in vulnerable situations, it can really create magical moments. And I totally fell in love with this work. I still work with our inspirational founders, Monica and Giora, and they trusted me with so many things and so many projects, and I'm forever grateful to them. And yeah, here I am 16 years later, managing director of, so I'm not managing all the 12 countries, so I'm managing the headquarters international office. We're connected, all of us together, and each country has their own local management, their own managing director, artistic director. And my job is to somehow oversee it, bring everybody together, make growth and change possible, help with strategies, help in crisis management, and just always make sure that our mission is in the core of whatever we do. And like I mentioned, our founders are still with us, and it is such a joy and privilege to be working directly with the initial with the initiators, with the pioneers who brought this to the world. So that's in a nutshell my story. I fell in love with the art of clowning. I fell in love with working in vulnerable places and spaces with vulnerable people, and to see the magic that the art of clowning can bring.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds to me, what I hear two things in your story that jump out at me. One is when you said that real clowning has something poetic, and you said it was like Zen Buddhism in that way, and therefore so applicable to people who are vulnerable. And the other thing that jumped out at me was that from the way you describe your organization, it sounds to me like you're also a community within your organization. And both of those things really speak to my condition. I think I recognize them both. Making sure that there's a balance, that you internalize the values that you're inspired by as well.
Mm.
So is that the way? Does that resonate with you? Does that sound like
it does, Laura. It really resonates with me, and it's constant work, as you know. You're also the director of a large organization, so to really internalize values and to shape them together, to go on this journey of like, what are our values? What makes us tick? What makes us better? Was a long journey. So we started that. Oh, I don't know exactly, years ago. It must have been like 8 years ago, together in our community, as you mentioned. And we really try to find values that we can live by on the day-to-day work, and that are connected to the art of clowning. So in principle, what we achieved, and it was a painful process, it was painful and very emotional, because if you commit to one value, you might not commit to another value, or it's like, where do you draw the line? What does resonate with me as an individual? But what we made sure in this process is that we somehow use the work of the clown as a fractal of like, when the clown is in the room of like in the day-to-day work, what values are present.
right?
And so we amplified those to the larger organization. And it works. And it's so nice because we can all identify with them, and we really try to make them visible. So not to have them like somewhere just on the wall and that's it, but to constantly have them in our conversation, to constantly remind each other of those values, so that our community, as you said, is centered around those values, and that you can show up as your true self in this community, and that our guiding compass are our values and the mission, of course. And then it doesn't matter who you are, what your background is, you're welcome in this community. And I find it very inspiring. And so I'm also looking, when I recruit people, I'm always it's one of the questions I always ask. So how do your values resonate with our values, and will you be happy here?
It's wonderful. And can you give an example? Can you name, for example, one of the values that you share, and give an example of what that looks like, if you're talking about your programs working with vulnerable people, and what that looks like within your community, your staff, your trainers, your clowns internally? Can you? I'm sure you can give an example.
Yeah, I can. Let me just. Okay, let's take the most the most obvious one. Joy. Joy is one of our joyfulness, as we call it in our values. So I firmly believe that if we don't feel this joy as the people working in our environment, in the workplace, that we cannot bring it to the outside community. So a clown artist is really a clown is a joyful being. So it's not, doesn't mean that always happy. I don't speak about happy. I speak about joy. And so a clown who encounters, let's say, a sick child or a refugee child in the camps brings this inherent innocent joy. So this is how we see it, like in the moment. But
what's the difference? Sorry, did I interrupt you? What's the difference between joy and happiness?
For me, joy is more is more a constant kind of mindset that you have. It's a maybe a way how to view the world. And it doesn't mean it has to be always smiling and feeling this like giddy emotion. It's just, it's also accepting that maybe sometimes things go bad, but I can still be joyful. And we see this a lot in the areas we work in. If it's, whether it's a hospital environment or a refugee camp, you can be joyful despite the situation that you're in. And to me, this is more about, it's a more deeper, ingrained, basic human emotion, which is also proven by science, by the way. It's one of the 6 basic emotion is joy. And and happy is for me more like in this moment, maybe joy can lead to happiness, but happiness is something that's not so stable.
So joy as an essential component of being human.
Exactly. Yes, thank you. This is perfect. This is perfect how you said it. And for me, I see this also in the workplace that we like to, we like to fail and we have fun when we fail because we have this joy. Like so many projects don't work out. It would be dishonest to say that everything we do is perfect.
Hmm.
This is also as the road to success is failure. And I remember one time we applied for a large grant with the European Commission. We didn't get it, and we just, we cried, but we also just ordered pizza, had a beer, and, and still kind of cheered to the learnings and to the success. And joy can also manifest how we lead our meetings, that we try to have check-ins every meeting, that we have a check-in with each other, and that can be very joyful.
Hmm.
It's also that we created a strategy, a 5-year strategy for a global strategy for the whole Red Noses group. And we then asked our artists to create a song about the strategy and like how they feel it, how they see it. And now we will meet in Poland very soon, from about 2.5 weeks from now, 200 people from the Red Noses Network, the first time since the pandemic. And we will put the strategy into dance. So I
Oh,
think
nice.
it's always about this, okay, like what is it that makes us tick, and do we all feel it? And joy
Hmm.
is one of these core components. So I feel it every time I walk into the office. I feel it when I see my team smiling, laughing together, goofing around. So for me, this is all about this joy. I see it when we walk into a refugee camp on Lesbos after we've been there for a while. It's just the faces light up, and it's such a privilege because we get back so much more than we can give. And and sometimes it's so simple yet not easy.
Yeah. I know that one of the things that kind of keeps me going, because I grew up in peace movements and civil rights movements, and trying to create alternatives to systems that oppress people, and where people end up losing many things, and friends and family and safety and all of these things that we count on as essential for survival. And now, many years later, seeing, well, sometimes you think, well, nothing's changed, and I think to some extent that's true.
Mm.
That there will always be disasters. There will always be large patterns of pain and suffering, and at the same time, there are always things that you can do.
Mm.
And when you're doing them, which is what I mean. This is what I hear. Something. I mean,
Mm.
I wouldn't describe our organization in exactly the same way, but there's something about when you're in the process of engaging with people, what happens gives you back so much
Yes.
that you find the courage to go on for that reason, because you see the possibility of change. And even looking at sort of the long range of history, so many things have happened because people have been doing all of those little things all the
Yes,
while, even if they're not so visible.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I think our work, or artistic work as such, not just Red Noses work, but also Musicians Without Borders, it's just so beautiful that we give these moments. So maybe this is sometimes, if you look at it from a more, let's say, strategic organizational development point of view, it's like, okay, what's the long lasting effect? But sometimes it's about the moment. Because if we also look into the world, there is only the moment that you're in. And if you can change your perspective in that specific moment, and maybe this is what I meant about Zen Buddhism.
Zen Buddhism, exactly. Yes.
It's like this one moment that you're in can really change the whole course of your life. I mean, that's maybe a bit exaggerated, but it can at least can open up the window to new perspectives or hope, as you mentioned, Laura. So for me personally, it's if I listen to a good piece of music, it just can really ground me, or it can really just remind me I'm a human being. I have
Mm-hmm.
emotions and they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if, for instance, our artists interact with the vulnerable people, refugee children or sick children in the hospital, it's about these moments of encounter between a human being and another human being. And I think the beauty about art is that we don't demand anything in return.
Mm.
It is where we have, and I talked a lot to other humanitarian aid workers in the field, and they're doing such fantastic work. And they kind of envy us sometimes. It's like, it looks so easy. You just go in and just do your thing, and everybody, like, the whole mood lightens up, and we bring the food, and we bring shelter, and we bring medicine, and it's not a competition. It's just that we come in without demanding anything in return.
Yeah, and you're bringing something that people need as much as they need food, clothing, and shelter. And that's a
Exactly.
sense of yourself as a creative being, a sense of this joy that you were talking about, and
Exactly.
that connection,
Mm,
that is about give and take, and it is about what the link between human beings, which nourishes, which everybody
mm,
needs. And I think which that's one of the things that people lose the
mm.
first when they've become displaced or have been in a war or have had to leave their homes, is that sense of connection to other people. And
Yeah,
I've heard, mothers say after a music workshop, this is the first time I've seen my daughter smile in 6 months.
yeah, same
You
here.
know,
Same
yeah.
here. I can totally relate to this, and those are the moments where I know everything we've done was worth it. And it's not just the children; it's also the parents, the other humanitarian aid workers that are somehow touched by the art. And I think that's the beauty about art. It's not just this one specific product almost that I bring to this one specific target group. It's so enriching for everyone. So if we go into a refugee camp and do a musical parade, everybody hears the music, everybody can join in. It doesn't matter whether you work in the camp, whether we had policemen joining us and laughing and singing with us.
Hmm.
And I think it's just this beauty about art, this like connection that you said, Lauren, whether it's music or performance with music. I think it is just this soul to soul, heart to heart connection that art can enhance, and why it's so important in crisis and disaster areas, because it reminds me you're a human being. I'm entitled to my feelings. I have emotions. They make me human. I can reconnect to these emotions, and I can go on.
And you mentioned other relief workers, or I wouldn't describe our work as relief work, but we think of it more as social change and peace
Mhm.
building. But obviously, it falls into that same category when you're actually in a refugee camp somewhere. Um, but how about that? Do you also like work with others who are providing services? Do your
Yes.
clowns also support like humanitarian workers?
Yes, we do, because we identified that really as one of our main, so to speak, target groups that we want to also support. So first of all, like I mentioned, they are part of the interactions that we do in the camps or in the unaccompanied minor houses, so they can already enjoy what we bring there. And sometimes this is already, like you said, such a relief for them to see, oh, this child is finally laughing, or I can connect to this mother. So this is already one of the aspects of our work. But then we kind of picked them out specifically and said, okay, so if you work in this context all the time, because we are not there all the time, we go kind of for a few weeks, or the team changes, despite us now building up a permanent presence in Greece. We take the teams, for instance, of volunteers or fellow humanitarian aid workers, and we work with them in so-called humor workshops. So we really want to bring them the value, or show them how powerful humor can be for a well-functioning team, and that you really need to also take this time for yourself and your team, because the demand and the pressure on humanitarian aid workers is just so high. It's about
Yeah.
saving lives. It's about getting things done, that sometimes they really forget about each other and themselves. And
Mhm.
so we try to like bring them together, and we got a lot of good feedback so far. It's basically we play with them. We show them, so it's not it's not clowns. It's the artist doing it, but not as a clown. But
Right.
we do games with them. We let them shine. We show them their talents. We show them that they can work together on something. And it's usually games that promote this feeling of it's okay to fail, and it's actually
Mhm.
funny to fail. And yeah, so it's really nice. I have to say that I really believe in those humor workshops. We call them humor relief workshops for humanitarian aid workers, and we got so far very good feedback. So it's again not something that you will learn, something that your work will become better. It's again very much on the emotional and human level, and then we give some tips for why don't you change meetings a little bit? Why don't you do this before you? And so far it really, we got great feedback, and we are evaluating it. So I'm because we put a special focus now in Lesbos on it, so I'm curious to find out more about it also.
It's so important because you hear so many stories about people who suffer so-called compassion fatigue or who burn out if they're working in nonprofit organizations. And also the pressure can be so great because we're all struggling against time. We're struggling with seeing and
Yeah.
experiencing a lot of human misery. We're often struggling with insufficient budgets to do what we actually want to do, and people needing to work extra hours, and all of those
Mm,
things.
mm.
And I think it's just so important to take the time to stop, to support each other, to listen, to make jokes and humor, as you
Exactly.
said, and because I think, to me anyway, one of the most important things about humor is being able to take yourself lightly. Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Being able to see yourself in the context of, not to let some of that weight go. And it doesn't mean being less professional or less compassionate or less efficient in your work, but just less burdened
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
necessity of whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, right?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. Humor is one of the largest resilience factors out there. So if you look into studies, even you see like what makes a person resilient, it's a sense of humor. And
Yeah,
humor has so
absolutely.
many different layers, and it is really so our humor is more the gentle humor. Of
Mhm.
course, I mean there's black humor and all of these things that are a bit more maybe harsh, but sometimes also very necessary. But so we work more with gentle humor, and it's so nice for people. We also do this, by the way, with medical staff, where we go a little bit more in depth of sharing our experience with how to connect with a patient, because sometimes it can be a little nice trick as have bubbles on you and just blow some bubbles and the child will relax. It could be even
Mhm.
something like this. But within the field with humanitarian aid workers, we really try to also convey this feeling you are also human, and
Mhm.
you, despite being in this circumstance, or despite working for this cause that might be very challenging, you are allowed to laugh, you're allowed to have a good time, you're allowed to have your own emotions. And because we hear a lot from especially organizations that work with a lot of volunteers or young people come in, that they feel like I cannot be happy. It's not okay. It's not okay to have a good time. There are people suffering. And so our humor relief workshops kind of flip that narrative and be like, it's okay. Everything is always
Interesting.
a holistic approach. So you're a whole person in an environment, and you're still a whole person, and you have other people around you. So go and have a good time also, because then you can help better.
Yes, it's interesting. Also, I don't know if you've probably experienced this phenomenon, but the idea that trauma attracts trauma. Sometimes people who join as volunteers are actually, or as anything in our sector, actually are partially there because they're trying to work out things that they still have in their own selves, and the recognition that we are all vulnerable and that we all have a past, and that there might be places where we are all blocked or in different ways, and the necessity of kind of understanding that, recognizing that, and holding it, and also knowing how yourself, if you are working in that kind of vulnerable situation, how to make sure that you yourself remain safe for the
Yes,
for the for the people that you're working with, so that you can manage your own stress. And I think that
exactly.
humor is one of the best ways, and a perspective of humor is one of
Yeah.
the best ways. Not, again, not taking yourself too seriously, and not seeing yourself also as a savior, huh?
Yeah, that is so important. Humor keeps you or makes you or forces you to be humble, because ultimately also our humor relief workshops, because we play with failure. And people are inherently funny. We're all funny. We have our quirks. We have our little, special things that we like or we don't like. So everybody is funny. And if we just acknowledge this and don't try to hide it, and especially do not try to hide our own weaknesses, we become very, very powerful. And I think this is what humor can do, is like you don't laugh at somebody with in a gentle way of humor, but if you laugh with somebody. And this is also where the art of clowning is so powerful, I think, because a clown is very gentle, very in the moment, and very much innocent, and also never laughs at you.
Hmm.
They're not mean, they're failing, and that's why they're funny. And if we can translate that into our own lives and actually embrace failure as something that is funny and that is
Hmm.
part of a human being and that makes us strong, it is extremely powerful and helpful. And we try to live this also in our organization. We really say, okay, if you make a mistake, if you fail, don't hide it. Let's learn from it. Let's grow from it. And because hiding it makes it worse.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, because we're talking a lot about, really about the property of art, in your case, clowning, in our case, music, in connecting people, basically, yeah? In
Mhm.
bringing people back into connection with each other, and we connecting with each other and with others. And to me, this is one of the aspects of art that has, well, not been lost, but definitely sort of pulled on the losing end in comparison with the kind of performative and commercial aspects of art. And I think it's one of the most important, connecting people, the function of art in societies. And another aspect that I think is too little understood and used, although there are good examples of it, is the ability to reflect what's going on. Because we're
Mhm.
also obviously working often in situations of extreme social injustice. With Musicians Without Borders, we're not so much on the stage. Sometimes with some of our projects, people are actually on the stage using that music to communicate something in a different way, which is
Mhm.
non-threatening. And I'm thinking, for example, of somebody like Charlie Chaplin, who was, of course, one of the world's most famous clowns.
He is or was.
Fantastic. It was, and in many of his films was also making a very important social commentary, but then in through humor, so in a way that people could sort of accept and see, whereas maybe a political speech wouldn't be like that. Does that relate to your work at all?
It does to a certain degree. I think what the difference is between maybe also our organizations is that, again, the art of clowning doesn't come with any pre-concept of this is the statement I want to make. By just being in that environment and being in the clown character, the clown character, him or herself, is already questioning. It's because it's a clown is driven by a constant curiosity and a constant kind of investigative scanning of the surroundings, and a very, very big innocence. So a clown can maybe ask something very innocently that he or she observes that can really make you think. I can give you an example that happened at Red Noses, where we worked in a rehab center, and a little boy, young boy, not little boy, young boy, lost one leg in an accident. And the clown just walked up to this boy and was like, "So how do you play football with this?" And everybody was like, "Oh my God." And the boy was so relieved. He's like, "Well, yeah, I will see. Maybe I'll attach something." So it was really like, and suddenly there was this connection because there was this innocence about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, something could be expressed that other people were afraid to express.
Exactly. So it is non-judgmental way. And a lot of times we have this also with the children in the refugee camps, that by just being there as a clown and just observing even a tent that the children can live in can become something amazing for the clown. But at the same time, the clown draws the attention to this. So I think this is where the social component comes in. But again, it's not with a pre-concept. There are forms of clowning that are like this, but it's not our way of working. So we are not coming in with, we want to teach you something. Sometimes we can work together with humanitarian aid workers, and they ask us, can you please draw the attention to this in a funny way? Like, I remember in Jordan, there was a Save the Children asked us, said they have an issue with getting children back to school after the break, and if we could help with this. So, but again, we did not like come in with something pre-done, but it was more like, hey, school, and just like draw attention to the facts that there is a school, and a school is something nice, and and so it's more about this. But ultimately, I do think the art of clowning is by being so in the moment and investigating your surroundings in a very innocent way, and by like in this naive way, drawing the attention to things that don't work, for instance.
Children should have the right to play.
Yeah, for sure.
If we're there. These children shouldn't have to be in this camp where it takes a clown to get them to laugh.
Absolutely. So this I agree totally with. It is. I was speaking about the clown or the artist, him or herself. As an organization, as Red Noses International Organization, we have a clear opinion on issues like children's rights or rights of refugees or art and health. So as an organization, we do. But in the moment of the artistic encounter, no. So
of course, that's you're there. You're with the people that you're with. It's not a we're teaching you a lesson about something. It's an interaction in the basis of clown.
Exactly. And also children will not buy it. That's the thing. Children are so intelligent. So if you come in with like, I'm going to like have this clown show about how to wash your hands, it's not going to no. They will block it. But it has to be more playful. And play, as you mentioned, Laura, is something extremely important also to us. So we really also promote this Article 31 of the CRC, the Children's Rights Charter, is that we really say the right to play. And we bring this also with our Circus Smile format, where we're not working as clowns, but where we work together with children and families. That's very new. It's brand new. With the parents, so to create this bond between child and caretaker. Let's see how it works out. It's, like I said, brand new. And so to just create again these safe spaces where children can play, where they can learn little magic tricks and then perform. And this is also very, very nice. So that's a second kind of approach that we have, especially working with refugees. But there the clowns are not in costumes, so not as clowns, but as artists teaching. So that's a different setup.
We talked earlier about the kind of the one-off thing as opposed to the so-called sustainable long-term, which I also believe in long-term sustainable projects, and we've created a number of them. But I also know who hasn't had some single experience that has completely changed your life at some point.
Absolutely.
And what is more powerful than art for that? So the idea that you can go somewhere where maybe the next week, if you go back, you're going to be dealing with working with a whole different group of people. Still, that being in the moment, that Zen wisdom of here we are right now, and we're here for 100%, and we bring our humor and our art and our connection, and that's to me, that's one of the most magical kinds of ways of working.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you, because ultimately we're all, human beings living on the same planet, and sharing these 6 basic emotions. They're universal. That's been proven by science on so many levels, that we all feel the same things. We might not behave in the same way. Our environment that we grow up in, our religion, our country, how we identify as, all of these things influence how we behave, but not how we feel. And I think this is really something that we need to be aware of, that actually this is what connects us, the emotions and how we tackle them.
Yes, and to me also, at least one of our main goals is to strengthen the capacity for empathy, which is not sympathizing with somebody's feelings, but feeling somebody's feelings. This sharing of feelings, this really, that when somebody else is hurt, that you want to cry, or that you understand that capacity for empathy. And I think that in many of our societies, that's not been at the top of the list of human qualities that need strengthening. And I think that that's one of the things that art can really do, is to strengthen this sense of empathy.
Absolutely. I've seen it many times that, in our humor relief workshops or while we work, people start crying, and it's such a relief to them. And it's like, I feel human again. Oh, I see you cry. And you immediately connect, if you're, let's say, not completely, psychopathic, you immediately connect with emotions, because you know what they feel like. If somebody cries, you know what that means. And I think this is where art can really build this connection and build these spaces where empathy is allowed, and empathy is even wanted. And I think this is art is extremely powerful. And I think networks like Art27 and other networks like the Arts and Health Lead from the WHO that we work with now is we just need to make people aware of this power of art, that it is a basic human right, that if you look also at the definition of health by the WHO, I cannot give it now word by word, but it basically says that it's not just the absence of disease, it's a complete state of mind and a complete state of well-being, and art can provide that. And I think we need to drive this. We need to influence the climate of ideas regarding this, also with policymakers, with other humanitarian aid workers, with healthcare workers, with opinion leaders. So I think it's just so important that it becomes aware that art should be part of the larger concept.
Yes, and let's hope that we can also persuade some of those policymakers and leaders to not only understand that and embrace empathy, but also to have a bit more humor in their work.
Absolutely. Humor, I think, is one of the key qualities that you need to live a healthy life. Let's say it like this.
This was a real delight. Thank you so much, Natalie Porias, for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much, Laura. It was a pleasure to be here.
ReSounding is brought to you by the Art27 Network, a network of like-minded initiatives using art and culture to respond to the ongoing crisis of displacement of human beings in Europe and around the world. To find out more and to join our growing network, you can visit our website, art27.art, or follow us on Facebook at Art27. This podcast was produced and edited by Ed Holland. The theme tune was written by Matteo Galesi in collaboration with SYNCR. Thank you for listening.